This man likes to shower and brush his teeth in someone else's house, and the woman in bed is completely unaware of it. After washing up, he actually sleeps next to the woman. When he wakes up in the morning, he does not panic and eats his breakfast before leaving. The woman was completely unaware. He has been eating and sleeping for nothing for 6 months. This woman's name is Kyungmin. She always feels sore when she wakes up. She found that half of the milk she had just bought was missing. The toilet lid had been lifted inexplicably, and the combination lock seemed to have been tampered with again. Kyungmin was a little scared, so she reset the password before leaving home. But when she came home from work at night, she found that the combination lock cover had been opened again. Kyungmin lay down on her bed with anxiety. Then she suddenly heard the sound of someone pressing the combination. Immediately afterwards, the door handle was turned frantically. The woman was too frightened to make a sound. She cautiously looked out through the peephole, but there was nothing outside the door. She was brave enough to go out and check, but the corridor was also empty. However, at that moment, she found the cigarette on the ground. Kyungmin called the police, but the police said that just a cigarette but did not mean anything and that perhaps the neighbor had opened the wrong door and told her not to worry. The next day at work, Kyungmin met a strange customer. He claims to be a woman's neighbor and says he wants to buy her coffee. Kyungmin refuses. What she didn't expect was that the man suddenly lost his temper and cursed at her. Fortunately, the manager arrives in time to help Kyungmin out. On the way to the end of the day, the man reappeared and he grabbed Kyungmin and said he would take her home. Kyungmin refused. However, the perverted man did not give up. The manager reappeared and drove the pervert away and sent her home. Kyungmin arrives home to find the power has gone out. At that moment, there was another knock at the door. Kyungmin nervously looks out through the peephole and finds out that it is the manager outside. Kyungmin's wallet was left in the car and the manager came to deliver it. But when the manager went to the bathroom, Kyungmin suddenly thought of something. She asked the manager how he knew where he lived and what number he lived on. At that moment, the manager suddenly turned off the faucet. Kyungmin got scared and hurriedly excused herself to get coffee. She went out and immediately called the police. But to their surprise, they found that the manager had been killed. Because of the manager's accidental death, the woman decided to move immediately. But when she was cleaning, she found an access card. The card was for the same beauty as herself. She took the access card to try one house at a time. Finally, she found it. Entering the room, she found that it had been unoccupied for a long time. Through the photos on the wall, Kyungmin learns that a girl who used to live here also lives alone. So she found the girl's trail through the bank statements in the room with her best friend. The girl's name is Seung-hwa, and she spends 3,200 won at the convenience store every Saturday at 1 p.m. It was exactly 12:30 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. The two men immediately went to the convenience store and found a suspicious woman. They immediately followed her, but lost her at a fork in the road. They decided to split up. Kyungmin saw a suspicious house. She was surprised to find that the lock on the door of this house was exactly the same as her own. She enters her own house's code. The gate was indeed opened. She dialed Seung-hwa's phone and followed the ringing. The next scene stunned the woman straight away. Seung-hwa's hands were tied to the bed and tubes were stuck in her arms. What was even scarier was that her legs had been sawed off. Kyungmin rushed to call the police, but just then the murderer actually came back. She was so scared that she hid under the bed. The man came to the bed and skillfully injected Seung-hwa with anesthetic. Kyungmin learns from the man that he is the murderer who hid in her house and killed her manager. Kyungmin is too scared to make a sound and sneaks out when the man is not ready to escape. But at that moment, her cell phone actually rang. Kyungmin rushed out through a door and frantically ran for her life. But the killer always managed to block her way. Kyungmin hid in a roll-up door. The murderer soon came looking for her. The woman looked at the murderer in despair. At the critical moment, her best friend pushed a cart and knocked down the murderer, and then struggled with him. But soon she was knocked to the ground by the murderer. Fortunately, the police arrived at that moment and scared the murderer away. The police found Seung-hwa's body and found a business card in Seung-hwa's hand. It was the same one that Kyungmin handed to the pervert at the bank counter. The perverted man was soon caught by the police. The woman finally breathed a sigh of relief. Kyungmin moved to a new house and installed 3 locks. I thought everything would be settled, but on this day, she received a delivery. The box is actually the phone she dropped at the killer's house. The phone is full of photos of yourself while sleeping. This is when the bestie called the video call. But the video is not the best friend, but a strange man. The man hid in the toilet. The unaware bestie returned to the room. Kyungmin shouted his bestie's name, but the phone was put on mute. She immediately ran to her bestie's house. By now, the bestie in the video was already drugged out. The man took out a saw and was about to saw off her leg. Jin-min immediately grabbed a fire extinguisher and started to smash the door. but then a pair of big hands grabbed him from behind. It was the perverted man from before. The man grabbed her by the neck. Fortunately, the police arrived in time to control the perverted man to save her and her bestie. The police gave Kyung-min a surveillance camera. She returned home and installed it immediately. Looking at the clear picture, Kyung-min went downstairs to the convenience store with peace of mind. In the convenience store, she met the security guard downstairs. The security guard shushes her, but just as Kyung-min was about to leave, she heard the security guard's payment amount was 3,200 won. Realizing what was going on, she immediately ran home and locked all 3 locks. Just then, the police called to tell them they had arrested the wrong person and to keep her away from home. Kyung-min was scared and took out her phone to watch the surveillance. She was surprised to find that the security guard had returned to the room before her and was hiding under the bed. Kyung-min shivered in fear. Suddenly, a hand reached out from under the bed and grabbed her foot. The woman desperately ran for the door, but the door was too much locked to open. The man immediately rushed over. This one woke up to find she had been anesthetized and felt weak. The perverted security guard was holding her from behind. It turns out that this security guard was previously a veterinarian who specialized in picking on women who lived alone. Kyung-min trembles and cries out. The guard touched her body and told her not to be afraid. Kyung-min was suddenly bitten on his ear, picked up the syringe and inserted it into the guard's hand, then took the opportunity to escape. But she couldn't find the exit, so she could only hide in the corner of the room and shiver. The man picked up the axe and came over. Just then, the police arrived. The 2 men struggled together, but the policeman was no match for him and was killed by a pin in the neck by the security guard. The guard picked up the axe to cut off Kyung-min's hand. Kyung-min choked his wound. During the fight, the 2 knocked over the cabinet and were pinned underneath. Kyung-min pushed the security guard away. The guard's head hit the nail above and died on the spot. Later, Kyung-min changed cities and was ready to start over. But is it safe under her bed this time?